Hello everybody, thank you for taking some time to join us today as we would like to give you some deeper understandings of what remote learning will look like for years 7 to 10. Today I'm actually joined by our Principal of Secondary, Deborah Letcher, along with the heads of learning modules, so Daniel Deroon, who's the head of learning module for year 7 to 9, and Peter Lamprecht, who's the head of learning module for years 10 to 12. But as is the tradition of Heathdale, when we have community times together, we like to actually start with prayer. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd actually would like to lead you in prayer. Gracious God and Heavenly Father, we say thank you for this day. We also say thank you for the chance to be able to gather together to actually contemplate what the next few weeks will look like. Father, we want to say thank you that you are the ever-present one in our community. You are the one that called Heathdale into being. You are the one that has been with Heathdale on this day, and you will lead us into the future. Father, you know that the challenges that we are facing, and you know the responses that are required. And we just ask that you will continue to give us the wisdom and insight as we contemplate these things. So we just commit ourselves to you in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Thanks for letting me pray. Before Deb and Peter and Daniel come and speak to you, I'd just like to take a few moments to raise a few or make some introductory comments, if that's okay. Over the break, I found myself wondering how the Heathdale community was travelling. And as I was reflecting on this, I found myself giving thanks to God for this fantastic, vibrant community. And I say this with a sense of gratefulness because I just love being part of this community. And so I also want to say thank you to you, all of the families, for the privilege and honour it is to be able to partner together and partner particularly in this challenging time. To our families who are on the front line, excuse me, to our families who are on the front line and essential workers throughout this pandemic. The staff and I would like to say to you, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing and thank you for helping us to stay safe. We find ourselves in a place where we all hoped, had hoped that we wouldn't be. And, this is far from the ideal situation, but it does reflect the seriousness of this COVID pandemic. And when the state government announced stage 3 restrictions last week and the subsequent decisions for schools to move to remote learning for prep to year 10 students, it did bring additional challenges to us, but also along with that were some very necessary actions. And one of those immediate actions was for our school to act on the advice that is provided by the Health Department, the state government and Independent Schools Victoria to move to remote learning for our prep to year 10 students. When I heard this information or this announcement, I called a meeting with the response team. And as we considered how we were going to move forward with remote learning, one of the key considerations that came to the front of mind for us was that we are a really diverse community and that we will not be able to adopt a one-size-fits-all approach. See, because what works for one student may not work for another student. What works for one family may not work for another family. And what works for one group of teachers may not work for another group of teachers. See, what we've got to think through is that we knew that we could not take a one-size-fits-all approach. We've received some really well-intentioned suggestions on how we could manage remote learning moving forward. Suggestions like that we should run all-day classes online, or in other words, run all-day Zoom classes, as should be considered. Now, when we received that, on the surface, it seemed, okay, this is a concept that could possibly work. But as we reflected on it, we realised it could work for some students, maybe some subjects, and then maybe even for some year levels. But it does not necessarily work for all students all of the time. And it does not guarantee effective, deep and rich learning. See, the response team and I, at our discussions, focused on what was going to best support student learning as they travelled, learning through our excellent learning programs. And by identifying the learning intentions of each lesson, as well as units of work, and how well students are meeting these learning intentions, was going to be one of our key learning focuses. And by focusing on learning intentions, doesn't matter whether the learning is happening here on campus and in a classroom or in an online environment. See, our commitment to you, to our families, is to ensure that we see that each student is able to demonstrate at least 1 year's learning growth each and every year. And we do this through our carefully constructed curriculum, which is underpinned by a Christian worldview and has alongside it clearly identified learning intentions. One of the things that we do value also is your feedback. So I want to say thank you to all of the families who have taken the opportunity to complete the survey that we sent out earlier this week and returned that. And if you haven't done that yet, can I encourage you to do so, because your feedback is important to us. And see, because as we've contemplated this feedback and received it, we've realised that there's going to be and recognised that there's going to be some pieces of feedback that we could possibly use immediately. Then there's going to be some feedback that may require some longer term strategical thinking around them, and other pieces of feedback that at this point in time may not really benefit our community. But please give us your feedback, because we would welcome it. We think it's important and it helps us to make really good, well-informed decisions. You know, the well-being of our students and staff continues to be one of our utmost priorities. You know, and if your child or you and your family need pastoral care support, can I suggest to you to reach out to our student pastoral care team. They are a group of people who want to journey with you and with your child during this time. So please, can I encourage you to also reach out to them? And if you're a family that is experiencing some financial stress and difficulty at the moment, maybe through job loss or maybe because of the impact of a business, we'd also continue to encourage you to reach out, as other families have already done, because we want to stand with you during this challenging time. You know, it was really lovely to see the kinder kids and our year 11 and 12 students return onto campus this week. But in addition to that, I just know that the Prep to 10 staff are just longing to reconnect with the students. The students have been placed in their care. You know, they want to reconnect with your son and your daughters. And then they will do that through the remote learning experience. So I'll use that as a point to introduce Deb and say to Deb, come and hand it over to you and your team. So I'll give you the clicker as well, Deb, and then say, I'll come back and join you during the question and answer time. So over to you, Deb.
Thank you so much, Ross, for your words, and thank you for being present and meeting with us today at home. It really is a challenging time for all, but this time we go into this new period of remote learning having learnt a lot from our previous experience, and with the confidence that yes, we can do this together. It is hard for our students and our teachers to be facing another extended period of time away from the classroom, but I know and I've seen that our staff are committed to doing their best in this situation to continue to provide the quality learning and teaching through our online platform. We're going to, following on from what we learned last time, continue to offer a blended learning program that offers students a series of live online conferences complemented by activities, teaching videos and tasks that build their understanding and enable them to show their progress and receive feedback and assessment. we will be following again a live online classes timetable that matches with our overall semester 2 timetable, enabling students to use their timetable to structure their days. And Daniel will speak to that in a moment. Assessment tasks will be loaded on Canvas. Excuse me for a second. Sorry, frog in my throat. And each subject will have a clear summary for each week. We have made 3 key changes, however, building on what we learnt last time, and that's around more live online conferences, some revised workloads, and introducing morning homerooms. We've extended the number of live online conferences to include a greater range of subjects to help students stay connected to those teachers and courses. So students will now have conferences in their arts, technology, and health and PE subjects. We've worked with teachers to more clearly define appropriate workloads for each year level and set limits on overall work for the week. I'm hoping this will provide students with a more balance and reduce some of the pressure that students were feeling getting through their work each week. We've also moved from morning year level assemblies each morning to a morning homeroom at 8:40 each day. The role will be taken for those morning homerooms, and this will allow students to start their day connected to their homeroom teacher, receiving important announcements and input into their spiritual and mental health. We know that students are going to need ongoing support and development in learning those independent learning skills. So we're building that into our assemblies and year level times to help students develop those skills as they move into remote learning 2.0. Before I hand over to Mr. Deroon and Mr. Lamprecht, who's going to talk a little bit more about what we've got coming up, I'd also like to encourage you, if you haven't already, to ensure that you have a Canvas parent account. Tomorrow I'll be emailing all secondary parents with information about how they can join with a parent Canvas account if they have not already, or how they can better use the account that they have. If you've only ever used your Canvas account on your mobile phone, I'd really suggest that you open it up on your laptop and see the other features that are available. A Canvas parent account will mean that you can see the weekly work summaries for each subject for your students. You'll be able to see their marks going up in real time and track how they're doing in each of their subjects. And when your student receives a reminder email about missing or overdue work, you'll automatically get a copy of that and be kept in the loop. You'll be able to go online and read the written feedback your child is receiving for their work. So I know that if you do that, you won't have to wait for interim reports to know how your student is going. You'll be able to track their progress as often as you want to and communicate directly with their teacher. So look out for that communication that's going to come from me tomorrow morning. The information you'll see on Canvas this week obviously will be quite limited because we haven't started subjects again. But I'm sure once we get back into remote learning, you'll find that a really valuable parenting tool. I'm going to hand over now to Mr. Daniel Deroon, who's our head of 7 to 9.
Thank you, Mrs. Letcher. Appreciate your leadership throughout this time. I'm going to unpack a little bit more for you the timetables and what that means for your child as they try and go through this second block of remote learning. In semester 1, during that remote learning time, we worked with the timetable and we're going to do the same thing this time through. And semester 2 has a slightly updated timetable, so it's important that your children go and look at that new timetable and just compare it to their semester 1 so they can know where the differences are and can be aware, so they make sure that they're at all the conferences that they need to be. That timetable can be found on the intranet and will also be emailed out to them this week. The second timetable that they will receive is the one that labels their actual live conferences. Now it matches up with the other timetable, but it identifies which period is going to be given to a live conference. Now this second timetable is also going to be emailed to them, but it can be accessed on their year level tile as well. So it's important that the students have both those timetables and are aware of when their live conferences are. The timetable idea is that we want students to be working from homeroom time through to the end of the day and allocating the appropriate time to each subject. When the teachers sit down to work out what work they give for the subject, they're going to identify how many periods they have across 2 weeks. So if I look at my Year 8 maths class, I've got 9 periods for the 2 weeks, and then I've got 3 of those I'm dedicating to live conferences. That means the work that I'm setting will be allocated towards the 6 periods that are left over. So I identify that work that I'm going to put towards those 6 periods, and I ask the students to complete it within the timetabled times for mathematics. What we don't want to happen is for that work to then overflow into another period for another subject, because that has a knock-on effect or a snowball effect to make them fall behind in multiple subjects. Ideally, what we want to identify is that if there's been too much work allocated in one subject and a student hasn't been able to complete it within the allocated periods, that they communicate with their teacher and say, I've been trying, but I just haven't been able to finish all the work. This gives us the feedback to then act on that and accommodate or change our next week's program to help students catch up on the work which was not able to be complete. And it also then allows us to reassess how much work we are setting so that we make sure it's going to be balanced. And that's some of the feedback that we received from last time, which we're trying to improve upon this time. So it's important that we have that communication and that we try and stick to those timetabled periods so that we can make sure that instead of falling behind across the board because we spend too much time on one subject, we're getting an accurate picture of the workloads for each subject. And again, emphasising communication to make sure that we can stay on top of that and stay up to date so that everyone feels confident and able to complete what we are asking the students to do. With that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Lamprecht, who's going to speak to us.
Good morning, my name's Peter Lamprecht, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm the head of 10 to 12 learning module. I'd like to talk to you about if I just get this clicker to work, the students in Year 10 who are doing a Year 11 subject. Now, we've got a number of students that need to come onto campus to sit in on the Year 11 classes, and we've got maths methods and vet, sport and recreation that some of our Year 10s are enrolled in. So those students who are enrolled in those subjects are required to sit in on those classes, and they can come into school at just before their lesson, and they need to sign in at the Werribee Secondary Admin Office. But before they do that, they need to get their temperature checked, as do all the students on campus. So when students arrive here, they must get their temperature checked immediately. So if your child needs to stay on campus for the full day, they need to email Werribee Secondary, and we'll arrange for supervision, and they may be able to use one of the computer rooms there to do their remote learning. So that's for the Year 10s. So just a reminder that all students and staff need to get their temperature checked. So that's a requirement for everybody on campus. So the Year 10s that arrive during the course of the day need to get their names signed off at the admin, and when they need to depart the campus, they need to get signed out as well. So that's what needs to happen for the Year 10s. So we've also got the secondary parent-teacher interviews coming up. So next week, on July 21 and July 23, we've got two evenings there that you can meet with your parents online. So the parents can meet with teachers online, and I really do encourage you to touch base with your teachers and meet with them online. So we do this through Teams meetings and through Teams conferences. So if you're not sure of how to organise a parent-teacher interview with your teachers, simply email Werribee Secondary and we'll get in touch with you to explain to you exactly what needs to be done. It's a very simple process. Many teachers have already organised times for parent-teacher interviews. So that's on July 21 and July 23. So I'm hoping to meet some of you on those 2 nights. Subject teachers will confirm your time with you by sending out a Microsoft Teams invite, and that will come through your email. So now that's enough from me, and I'd like to hand it over to the Principal of Secondary again, Mrs. Letcher. Thank you.
Oh, I'm not going to substitute for being the Principal of Secondary, but I figured, Peter, thank you for that I'll actually pick up the question and answer time. And that's just another way of helping with Deb and her voice, but from there. So what we've said, and I forgot to say right at the start, so my apologies for that, if you have got a question, if you could do that in the chat line, and I've got a team who's working behind the scenes who are happy to gather those questions and then present it up to us. So they'll come up on the screen there, and then one of the team or I will actually answer those questions. So if you've got a particular question, please jump onto the chat section right now and then bring it up, and we can go from there and have a look from there. So there's a first question. So question one was, will there be anything provided for extension students again? E.g., there were small groups were really successful and enjoyable last time. So I'm not sure. You're going to do that one? Okay, thanks.
I'm actually not entirely sure what extension groups we're referring to. I know there were some that operated at primary. We have got teachers who can also facilitate extra, what we're calling drop-in classes. So when a teacher identifies that there's a group of students either needing extension or needing extra help, they're struggling to get the work done or they're struggling to understand the concepts, our teachers are scheduling times fitting in with the timetable of when they would usually have that subject and letting the students know via the daily notices in the morning. That's why it's so important that they do log on for homeroom, and students can opt to join in those classes if they need some extra help.
Thanks, Deb. And a second question's come up, and I know, Daniel, this is clearly going to be for you. And will there be Minecraft again? Now, I'm not surprised that this question's come up, seeing how successful the Year 7 camp was. So if you could step up and answer that one for us, please.
No problem. No, it's great that the students really enjoyed Minecraft camp, and it was meant to be a special event orientated around a substitute for camp in that degree. Now, with that in mind, we know the kids really enjoyed it, and we know that the Year 8s and 9s are also interested in it. And so we are looking at avenues to implement it in lunch times or different areas of school. Rather than taking out class time, it would be something that we'd be doing as a bit of an extracurricular if we can fit it in. Again, it's on our list. It's what we're looking at, and we're hoping to be able to achieve something.
Thanks, Daniel. It was good. Yeah, and it was clearly a real success. So I think you came on to something that was pretty good there to think about what we'll even use for the future, even if there's not remote learning, which is great. Next question's come through. It says, are there going to be on-campus lessons for those who are struggling online in their learning? Now, Deb, would you like to have a first go at that?
Thanks, Ross. We're going to be contacting some parents today and tomorrow of students that we identified from last time who really were not able to manage that independent learning on their own. And so we've made some provisions for some students from Year 7 to 10 that staff have identified that they would really benefit from at least starting off the remote learning period in a structured environment. So they'll still be doing the remote learning, but in a more supervised way, and we can help them with their organisation and managing that. So some parents will be contacted about that in the next day or so. At Year 7 to 10 level, that may mean that some students with additional learning needs are functioning well at home and don't need to come in. It also might mean that we have some students with additional learning needs who maybe need to come in for a week. It might not be the first week, it might be after a couple of weeks when we see that they're not really keeping on top of things. Come back in for a week, get a reboot, get some extra help with those learning skills, and then be able to work from home again. We're also conscious of really minimising the risk of having as few students on campus really as possible while we're in a local area with heightened risk. So yeah, there'll be some of that happening.
Thanks, Deb. What I loved about your answer there, and the response team and the staff are working through, if you heard there that the core principle is how are we going to support a student in learning, and rather than just say, oh, how are we going to support year 7 or year 11, what we're actually thinking is about how do we support this child or this student or that student, and the flexibility about the support that Deb, you just spoke about, was really important one. That, as you say, it can be on campus. It actually may be just some extra time from there. Peter, did you want to add anything that in particular, or have you got your eye on the next question? Let me. So the team behind me are having a look at the screen, and they're really getting themselves well organised as they move forward. The next question is a really, really interesting one, and it's a question that says this: there are talks that the state may go to stage 4 restrictions, and what will be the implications for undertaking VCE subjects? I'm going to get you come in a second, Peter, but if you wouldn't mind, I want to just make a couple of initial comments. One of the things that's really interesting is that we talk about stage 4, but the clear actions for stage 4 have not been announced yet, and so they're actually recognised it's a stage we could go to. And the closest example we have of anything of a stage 4 is New Zealand, and so a lot of people are using the New Zealand experience as a reference point for what could be for us. One of the things is that if a stage 4 restrictions are announced, there will be particular details that will be announced for that, and what that will look like. And I have no doubt there will be some of the stuff that will come into place for that for the VCE students, because again, Premier Andrews said, even on his initial thing, we've got to make sure that those who are in the Greater Melbourne area are not disadvantaged for those who are other areas throughout Victoria. So Peter, I don't know if you've got anything else you'd like to add. That'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Grace. Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things. So we're treating this pandemic very seriously here at Heathdale, and we are ensuring that students are socially distancing. And we've actually opened up the rooms for the homerooms, so there's double rooms now. So ensuring that there's enough space in the classrooms now. We've heard from VCAA that we actually are doing the right thing by our students, and we need to treat this this pandemic day by day, and as Mr. Grace pointed out, that we'll be communicating with you if we hear any news. So we'll be meeting very quickly, responding very quickly, and communicating with you promptly. So our students are safe when they come on campus. They're socially distancing. Staff are doing the same thing. If you do have any concerns, please don't hesitate to call us or email us, and we'll get to you with those concerns. At the VCAA have bumped the exam back a couple of weeks, so we'll ensure that we're across what VCAA are directing the schools to do. So that's something that we're looking at very carefully. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. So for families who don't know, the VCAA is the Victorian Curriculum Assessment Authority, and they are actually the bigger ones that organise and manage the whole year 11, 12 or VCE course. And as the government has announced that they really want to do for the year 12s to be completed this year. So even when a decision around stage 4 comes, that will be a part of their broader plan. There's another question that's come my way. It says, students who are enrolled in textiles, will they need to use a sewing machine or anything like that? Now, I think Daniel Deroon might want to add. Oh, no, Deb, you're going to.
Yes, well, a lot of us are doing a bit more sewing these days, and I've certainly been on my machine. Yes, we have a wonderful new textiles teacher, actually. It's a wonderful opportunity to introduce Mrs. Matambara to our students. We have Year 9 and Year 10 textiles, and last remote learning period, we did send home sewing machines to enable our students to be able to do that. It'll depend a little bit on numbers and who already has a machine at home. But that brings me to another point, as well as making sure students have equipment for things they might need to do at home in terms of textiles. We did last time loan out to a number of families laptops to enable families who maybe did not have a laptop for all of their secondary students to be able to access the resources they need. And if that's you again this time, please get in contact with me or with the Werribee Secondary Office, and we'd like to help you out with that and make sure the students have what we need. Great,
thanks Deb. Next one, is the school considering a reduction in school fees? No, it looks like that's going to be my job to answer, and I figured that that was going to be the case. Yeah, as we did with remote learning last time, one of the major ways that we actually worked with families was that for those families that were experiencing financial distress, we offered that support and that they could make some adjustment to their fees. And so there was one of three options that were available. And one was a sort of a deferred payment plan. Another one was a revised payment plan. And a third one was actually a concession on the fees, depending upon their needs. And that was a needs assessment basis. And you do that by contacting accounts receivable at Heathdale, and they will be able to guide you through that. We also made a credit to fees, especially around the user pay spaces. So, for example, those who use the buses, there was a credit that will be provided there. We will follow that similar principle. But also for the educational resources levy, we actually gave all families a 50% credit on that account at that time, because we recognised that levy covers things like visiting performers, guest speakers and other experiences like sports and carnivals and things like that. Because they didn't occur, there should be no cost, and so they were credited back to families. We're going to follow the same model as we move into this period of remote learning. So the issue is that we're saying, or if we need to revisit around the educational resources levy, we will do so, but we'll probably do that towards the end of term. But in terms of the bus user, well, we're actually going to start that process right now. But in regards to the tuition fees, we're actually saying no, there will not be any discount or reduction of school fees, because we are still providing the Heathdale curriculum through remote learning and on-campus learning for the kinder through to year 11 and 12 students, plus the group of students that Deb spoke about who need to come and have a supported learning. So that's where we'll be, how we'll be travelling moving forward. The next question is one, as for the online programs, will the League of Nations tournament operate? Is that you? Is that you? That's over to you, Daniel. Okay.
Yep, League of Nations is a new name for it, League of Legends. The tournament that we conducted was a trial in term 2. And ideally what we're trying to do for these Minecraft camps, for these online experiences, is just allowing in remote learning still for students to have community, for them to work on their social skills, to really try and still focus on the whole growth of each of your children. And so we're trying to implement each of these programs as best we can to try and identify some areas where they might be lacking during remote learning, in that ability to socialise, to communicate, to have the opportunity for teamwork, all of these things. And so we're looking at different programs that allow us to do that while still being fun and enjoyable for the students that are being involved. So will it run again? It's a discussion we're having. And so it's one that we'll continue to talk about, and it may not be that we go down that pathway, but it may be another pathway that we follow. But it is important to us that we continue to provide those experiences for your children.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm presuming, I just want to make sure I'm hearing it correct. So that was the one where there was the video clip where it was the shot over the shot? No?
This is a video.
It's electronic online sports competition.
Okay.
Yeah, League of Legends. It's a big game, Ross. You should get the app.
Welcome to your principal, who is a dinosaur and clearly is completely out of touch with pop culture. But no, I suppose I'd rather go back to that challenge one where, you know, Dan, if you saw the video where Daniel threw the swoosh through over the backside. The truth is we probably are going to do that, but Daniel wanted another 5 weeks just to refine his skills before he actually starts the video from there. Okie dokie. Final question. For younger school levels, even early secondary, is there any option of doing core subjects and not doing the specialist subjects at home? For example, not at home, no woodwork, PE, food, music, etc. These had no conferences last term and were difficult to do with students being left on their own. So Deb, were you okay to pick that one up?
Yeah, and that was one of the things we picked up from last time, that without those conferences to have that touch-based interaction with teachers, it was more difficult for students. So the good news is those specialist subjects do now have conferences in the new online timetable that will start next week. And specialist subjects have really looked in depth at what they can do and how they can construct things that will be achievable at home and enjoyable at home. We want our students still to have a sense of variety and interest in their working day. We know that some families felt the need to say to their student, look, you need to focus just on those core subjects because there's enough work in there for you, and they found it very difficult to fit in those other subjects. I'm hoping that the revised workloads across all our subjects that Daniel spoke about before will enable students to actually be able to have enough time to really deal with the full range of subjects that they would usually have when they're on campus. And we don't want them to miss out on being able to do some of those special elective subjects, because that's part of the enjoyable experiences that they do have at school. However, if you as a parent really feel that your student is not going to be able to tackle all those subjects, or if as remote learning goes on, you can see that they are really struggling to keep their head above water, please let us know and talk about that. We can modify expectations. We can look at how we vary things so that our students are able to keep engaged and keep learning and keep making progress.
Okay, well, thank you, Deb, Peter and Daniel for contributing with those questions, and thank you to you for the people at home for supplying us, and I hope that each of our answers have been really, really helpful to you. But as I said to you before, if you've got any other questions, though, you've lost the opportunity on the chat line, but you haven't lost the opportunity through questions at Heathdale. What we've been endeavouring to do is we make sure that that is an area that is closely monitored, and when we receive a question, it is actually sent on to particular people who are going to give the best answer in that space. So that's why we would say, if you've got any question, and remember, our rule is this: there's no such thing as a dumb question. So please, if you've got a question, ask it, put it on Questions at Heathdale, and we'll be really happy to come back to you. So I want to say to you, as we draw to a close today, thanks for coming online with us. Thanks for joining us. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. And we'll be praying for you and your families through this season of challenge once again. So as I close, can I just simply say, stay safe, stay well, and we look forward to seeing your son or daughter thrive through this time of remote learning. And then we also look forward to the time that ultimately, as a community, we can come back together again. So thank you, folks. God bless. Farewell.